This is the Bible Ranger, and I'm excited today to be doing the 100th episode. It's taken over a little bit over 2 years, and you're going to like this one. It's called The Living Dead, or Jesus and the Seven Feasts. Even if you read the Bible from cover to cover, it's written in a way where we can always learn something from it. So while we're on earth, we can always learn something. Okay, so don't think you know it all. Like, look at this African proverb. A wise man never knows all. Only fools know everything. That's pretty true. I'm sure it sounds a little bit like a proverb from Solomon. There are some strange verses in the Bible that are only found in Matthew. For example, Matthew 27:51 through 53. Let's take it verse by verse. 51, the veil from the temple torn from top to bottom. This is when Jesus died, okay? There was an earthquake and rocks split. Verse 52, the graves were opened and many bodies of the saints which slept arose. That's strange. And came out of the graves after Jesus' basically resurrection and appeared to many in Jerusalem. What? Well, let's unpack that a little bit because this is kind of strange. All right, so let's build the foundation first to understand everything, okay? The gospel, as we know, has 4 books: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That's the gospel, right? However, Matthew was written with the point of view that Jesus is the king or as the Messiah. And Mark was written with the point of view of Jesus as the servant. Luke was written with a point of view as Jesus as the man. And John was written with a point of view as Jesus as the Son of God. Also, these 4 books were written for a particular crowd. The book of Matthew was written for the Jews. And even in the first verse of Matthew, it actually says it right there. The book of Mark was written for the new converts in Rome, so we'll just say it was written for the Romans. And Luke was written for the Gentiles in general. Now, Luke was also a Gentile, by the way. He was a doctor and he was a Gentile. Now, the book of John was written for all the world, right? All right, so we got that down. Now, so the story of the Walking Dead was written for the Jews. It appears in Matthew only because the Jews should have known something. Only the Jews would have understood this. So why do I say this? It's related to the 7 feasts of the Lord. You know, how in the world is that related? Well, that's what we're going to check out today. All the Jews made 3 trips to Jerusalem in a year, right? To celebrate 7 feasts. You're thinking that those numbers don't even add up, right? All right, so here you go. In the spring, there was 3 feasts. There was the Feast of Passover, there was the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and there was the Feast of First Fruits. Some of these feasts have multiple names, okay? Then 50 days later, they would come back again for like a Feast of Harvest. We now call it the Day of Pentecost. And then in the fall, you would have 3 other feasts. Number 4 would be the Feast of Trumpets. Number 6 would be the Day of Atonement. And the last one would be the Tabernacles, the Feast of Tabernacles. All right, so these are the spring feasts. Now, the spring feast is prophetically about the first coming of Jesus Christ. And you're going to see this in this whole study. Now, the fall feast prophetically is about the second coming of Jesus Christ. So obviously they have not been fulfilled. But the spring feasts have been fulfilled. Now, God has set up a plan for us, but we have to pay attention to see it. I didn't even see it out of all the years I've been a Christian. I knew there's some kind of relation in there, but I didn't see it as clear as this is right now. After the lambs, talking about the high priest, after the lambs were sacrificed, the high priest would go to a barley field that the Levites, they planted for this particular event. Okay, so they had a field not too far from where the temple was. So they will walk across the valley or wherever it was, and they will go to this field. Now they will bundle up or tie these barley sheaves to be cut in 2 more days, on the 3rd day. Now they were marked, they were tied like a bundle, kind of like this one right here. They were tied up, but they were not cut. They were just prepared to be cut as a temple offering to God, and that's called the first fruits of the harvest because the barley grain grew faster than the other ones. So they were the first fruit. Now this is incredible. About the time that the sheaves were tied by the high priest or marked, Jesus was also dying at the cross at the same time. And it says that at Jesus' death, about 3 o'clock, the earthquake from Jesus' death caused some of the graves to open. We're going to use the word marked. They were marked because they were opened, but nothing was coming out of them. Just like the sheaves were tied, but they were not cut. And they were set aside for God as first fruit also, just like the barley was tied up, and they were going to be set aside for first fruit, but they weren't cut yet. After the sheaves were marked, the lambs, going back to the actual high priest, the lambs were dead and they were given to the families, and the families are now cooking the meal. And it's a big meal, the Seder meal. And it takes hours and hours to prepare it. So by that time they were cooking it somewhere after 3 o'clock, the sun was coming down. And for the Jews, when the sun comes down, that's the mark of another day. Even in Genesis, it says that the evening and the morning were the first day. So by that time, the Seder meal, the Passover meal, it was eaten the next day, which is sundown. And that's the next day would be the Feast of the Unleavened Bread. Now, don't forget the unleavened bread week, it lasts a week. Okay, but that was the first day of it. So they would actually start eating that meal on the unleavened bread day. Now, a couple of days later, which would be the third day, early Sunday in the morning, somewhere around 5 o'clock to 5:30 in the morning before sunrise, something to this picture here, how it looks. The priests were out there in that barley field again. This is 3 days later, after they were marked. And guess what happened? Now, they're ready to cut it, right, as first fruit. However, the high priest would cut the marked sheaves at the same time that Jesus rose from the dead. This is incredible, okay? And after Jesus' resurrection, the marked open graves, the people were raised up, and they actually came out of the graves. All right? In the cutting of the sheaves, the high priest would free the sheaves from the roots that tied them to the earth. Just like when these people resurrected, they were freed from all limitations on the earth. Now these people now have glorified bodies. You know, and back then I never thought of these people having glorified bodies. But when you see them as first fruit, it makes sense. The sheaves needed to be prepared after they were cut by the high priest, okay, and they were taken to the temple. This preparation took about an hour and a half, okay, and it's going to be presented to God as the first fruit of the harvest. Meanwhile, the risen went to meet these zombies here. I'm just saying that as a joke. They're not zombies. They were glorified body people. They probably look more like this. They were finding their families, and they know what's going on. They said, look, they met their family. They said, I'm part of the resurrection. One day you can be resurrected too. Jesus is come for us. This is our time. And they went to meet their families, but they only went to meet their family for a little bit of time. And how we get that is the preparation of the time that it took to prepare the first fruits, which is about an hour and a half. So in that time, Mary Magdalene was looking for Jesus. She was disappointed he was not in the grave. She goes to the disciples. The disciples said, what? He's not in there? They start running, and Peter starts running first, and John passes them. They go into the grave. They notice he's not there. They leave, and Mary Magdalene is desperate, looking for the master. And she sees this man who she thinks is the gardener, and she goes, have you taken him? Please tell me where you've taken him so I can go get him. And he, after talking to her, she realizes that is Jesus, and she goes to hug him, and he says, don't touch me. I haven't presented myself or ascended to the Father yet as the first fruit. I'm like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. So Jesus is going to present himself as the first fruit with these ascended bodies, but he hasn't gone up yet. He just rose less than an hour and a half ago. As the high priest presented, now he's in the temple now, the high priest, they prepared this barley, and it's not prepared. They're going to give it to the Lord as first fruit. Jesus now is in heaven, and he's brought with him the glorified body saints that were marked on the grave. And he took them himself and these bodies to the Lord and say, Lord, Father, we are now the first fruit. Just like they did with the Jewish customs. Incredible. In 1 Corinthians 15:20, Jesus' resurrection is a prototype. In other words, the first thing of something that's going to happen later. That was the first fruit, and one day we're going to resurrect with a complete harvest. Only, of course, only believers in Christ is going to happen to. Now, theologians say that these risen saints probably died 3 to 10 years before Jesus, and that makes sense because they went to people they knew. If, we say, I don't know him from Adam, but if Adam would have risen, they wouldn't have known. Nobody knows how Adam looks. So they showed themselves, these people that died from 3 to 10 years, they showed themselves to their families. Their family recognized them, and they probably witnessed to their family, look, tighten up. This is going to happen to you too one day. So all this sounds like a plan, doesn't it? Like, I believe Jesus cleared Abraham's bosom, all the saints that died before Jesus, and he went in there and he took them up with them. Now, these people probably did not have a glorified body. Only those 3 to 10 year people, just so they can recognize the families can recognize them, and they can be a testimony to Jesus' incredible power. All right, today, our spirit goes to the Lord when we die, but our bodies will be transformed at the rapture or the second coming. We're not going to get a glorified body yet. This is when Jesus comes. All right, now doesn't this study make a lot more sense than the Easter bunny on Resurrection Day? A lot more, doesn't it? We just can't forget, even though we are not under the law, we're not under that covenant anymore, we can still learn so much from the Jewish ways and from the feast. We're not obligated to do them, but we can learn a lot from them. Now, when we study Jesus' mission with the feast of the Lord, right? And then we add the temple in the wilderness, what all the implements meant, the Ark of the Covenant, the light, the showbread, all that. It's crazy. It's like if God had a plan all along, and how patient he's been through all these thousands of years to show us about Christ. Now imagine that, God having a plan for us, huh? Now, I want you to be part of that plan. He wants you to be part of that plan. I know all our lives are messed up. We're sinners. We're going to hell without the Lord. There's no question about it, okay? So we need Jesus to be our Savior, okay? The Bible is not meant to be a quick read, okay? Matter of fact, God tells us in 2 Timothy 2:15 that it's our duty to study it. And as we study it, we're going to find a lot of hidden gems like this throughout the Bible and throughout time. I've been a Christian for a long time, and this is just incredible. I love it. Now, there is a punishment out there for the unbelievers, but that's not what he wants for you. Okay, he made a way for you. He made a redemption for you, but you have to follow him. Now, check out Romans 10:9 and John 1:9. And I thank you guys for being with me for these 100 episodes, and I'll continue some more with a little break here. And please subscribe and thumbs up, and thank everybody for being there with me and for me, and pray for the unsaved. This is the Bible Ranger, keeping the Bible simple yet rich in content. Thank you.